It is 18 months since the passage of the no confidence vote, which defeated the Granger-led government. It took 14 months wait for the elections on March the 2nd, and this was in violation of our constitution, which called for elections within 3 months after a no confidence vote. It is 105 days. Today is 105 days since the elections were held with no results, and 40 days since the recount started. There is no other country, I believe, in the world that has this record, have waiting so long for election results. And so Guyana again seems to be putting itself, as a first in the world. But the Guyana Elections Commission completed the recount of the March 2nd general and regional elections on June the 9th. The recount tabulation confirmed that the PPP-C won the elections with 233,336 votes, 15,416 votes more than the governing David Granger-led APNU-AFC coalition. These results have been consistent with the published statements of poll from election night and what international and local observers witnessed. GECOM, this is Guyana Elections Commission Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield, on June the 13th, submitted his report to GECOM. This report exposes complicity in the several attempts to steal the elections between March the 5th and March the 13th, 2020, whereby he now deems the results of the recount for each of the 10 electoral districts as not meeting, quote, the standard of fair and credible elections, unquote, based on the same baseless and unproven allegations as those of the APNU-AFC coalition. It is clear that there was a preconceived plan to derail the elections of March the 2nd. In passing, the Guyana Elections Commission has spent $8 billion Guyana dollars on these elections. This is equivalent to $81 per voter, one of the most expensive elections, I believe, in the world. This recent claim by the Chief Elections Officer that the recount revealed an enormous amounts of irregularities and therefore elections are not deemed credible is preposterous in the face of the 2,339 polling agents, each for the PPP-C and the APNU coalition. This would be over almost 5,000 polling agents, excluding the small parties that also had polling agents, but not throughout the country, as those two larger parties had. Approximately 10,000 GECOM electoral staff, over 2,000 police officers, one at each station, international and local observers who monitored approximately 60% of the polling stations, mainly in the most populated regions. No one saw these and witnessed or opposed or said anything in regard to dead voting, migrants voting, and that there was gross voter impersonations who are voting on election day, as the Chief Elections Officer now claims. Further, more than a dozen copies of the statement of poll are prepared at each polling station after the ballots are counted at each station on election night. Each statement of poll is signed by the Guyana Elections Commission staff at the station, as well as the party polling agents. Following this, one copy is posted on the wall outside of the polling station, and each party representative is entitled to a copy. Glaringly, his report also makes no mention of the blatant attempts at rigging during the tabulation of the results of the Electoral District 4 on March the 5th, 2020, by the GECOM District Returning Officer, Claremont Mingo, when he produced a spreadsheet of results for each polling station that did not match the statements of poll in the possession of the party agents. These fraudulent results of this district by the returning officer gave the APNU a 20,000 lead and thus landed their victory. On March the 6th, Mr. Lowenfield hurriedly submitted the result of all 10 electoral districts to the chair of the Guyana Elections Commission. It was only stopped through an injunction in the court. The court ruled that what had happened was unconstitutional and unlawful. The Chief Justice ruled that the statements of poll must be used. He again repeated this on March the 13th, and Lowenfield on the 14th again issued electoral results based on the Mr. Mingo's Region 4 results with the chair of GCOM. Unfortunately, the chair of GCOM has put in abeyance these results of March the 14th, while the recount commenced on May the 6th, 2020. This was in spite of a motion of the opposition appointed commissioners on the Elections Commission to nullify these fraudulent results. These events on March 5th and 13th occurred in the presence of all the political parties, representatives, international and local observers, each of the international observer missions, the Commonwealth, the Organization of American States, the European Union, the CARICOM, and the Carter Center, included in their reports that election day and the counting of the votes at each polling station the same night were free and fair. But the process of the tabulation of the results of one electoral district, number 4, was not credible and must not be used to swear in a new government. The head of the U.S. Electoral Observation Mission, the former Jamaican Prime Minister Bruce Golding, reported on the mission before the OES Permanent Council a few weeks ago. And he stated that, quote, he had never seen a more transparent effort to alter the results of an election. And he said this in the context of exposing the fraud in the Ghana elections, demonstrating that the statements of poll and the statements of recounts that were emerging from the recount showed that the Region 4 Mingo results were fraudulent. He went on to say, you know, it takes an extraordinarily courageous mind to present fictitious number when such a sturdy paper trail exists. He went on to say that the principal among these were the action of the returning officer in abandoning the use of statements of poll in the presence of the authorized party representatives, and to rely instead on a spreadsheet of unknown origin, which provided results that were significantly different from the statements of poll which party representatives claimed to be in their possession. Despite Mr. Lowenfield's willingness to declare the fraudulent results of both the March 5th and 13th tabulations, his June 13th report not only stated that the results were not credible, but he generated new numbers of valid voters based on the same baseless allegations and unproven allegations of the APNU AFC. In fact, these are the same numbers of invalid votes announced by the de facto President Granger on the night of June the 12th. Mr. Lowenfield reduced the total number of valid votes recounted from 460,352 to 185,260, thereby disenfranchising 275,092 members of the electorate who voted on that day. And then, unabashedly, awarded 125,010 voters to the APNU AFC, thereby giving them a 67.5% win, and 56,627,000 votes to the PPP, that is approximately 30.5% of the vote, with the remainder allocated to other political parties. It becomes more and more absurd and banal that Mr. Lowenfield then even went further to then divide up the regional votes, because we have general and regional elections, and played around and gave APNU some of the regions we voted, we won, and actually even gave us a region we didn't win. So instead of what we had won 6 regions out of the 10, he then split it off and made it 5-5. This manipulation will have dire consequences, of course, for the allocation of geographic seats, seats on the regional democratic councils, and of course, seats in the National Assembly. This is criminal. Disenfranchising 275,092 voters and statistically sitting down and apportioning votes, in my view, is high crime. In our view in the People's Progressive Party, Mr. Lowenfield's report is ultra-virus, unlawful, unconstitutional, and irrelevant with regards to what he, as the Chief Elections Officer, is required to do in accordance with the Constitution and electoral laws of Guyana. He is merely required to submit a tabulation of the results of the recount and a factual summary of the observations made during the recount of May 6th to June 9th. Opining on the credibility of elections is also ultra-virus, as this is the exclusive purview of the courts after the official declaration of elections are made and the elected government takes office. The declaration of the results now rests with GCOM's retired Justice Claudette Singh, the chair, and the 6 members of the commission. Having received the report, they must act within 3 days. Unfortunately, there are concerns that the chair, Madam Singh, based on actions she has taken consistently from her appointment in July last year to now, will succumb to pressure from the APNU-AFC and not declare the PPPC as the rightful winners of the March 2nd elections, based on Lowenfield's and the APNU-AFC allegations of the credibility of the elections. We still hope that she will make the only decision that she can, and that is to declare the rightful winner, the People's Progressive Party. In fact, the PPP won twice. We are probably one of the only political parties that won an election twice in 3 months, both by the statements of poll that were added up and by the recount. However, the Constitution, Article 177, makes it clear that the party that gets the single largest block of votes, their presidential candidate is deemed president until, and where the official declaration is made in which he is sworn in. So from our point of view, Irfan Ali, a presidential candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic, is deemed president, or as we call it, president-elect. Worryingly is that yesterday, Sunday, de facto President Granger had a press conference in which, one, he supported the March 14 declarations of Lowenfield and felt they were accurate, and also brought into the whole political fora the issue of a state of emergency being called, and in anticipating that were the chairman to nullify the elections, that they would have to have a state of emergency in order to have money, as there's no parliament, parliament is dissolved. And so he has introduced into the political debate the issue of a state of emergency. For us, these are indications of a dictator and dictatorial fiat. That in response to the president's interview yesterday, where he spoke about considering a state of emergency, that the People's Progressive Party put out an urgent press conference in response that stated that were this to go in this direction, were the president to go in this direction, were the elections to be, the Lowenfield figures were to be used, that we would make it abundantly clear that we will not return to Parliament or support the convening of Parliament unless the true results of the 2nd March 2020 elections, as recounted and lawfully declared by the Guyana Elections Commission. So I want to just say that we are in a very precarious position. Democracy is on the precipice in Guyana, and we are now in the hands of the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission. The Constitution makes it clear what she can do, and the Constitution makes clear what Mr. Granger cannot do. And therefore, the issue of constitutional rule, democracy, is at stake. And therefore, over the next 2-3 days, we will know our fate. But that we continue to work with our people to alert the international community and to win support. When the March 15th Region 4 results came to be known, there were spontaneous responses by many of our supporters and friends in villages which we won. And we did go and put it down in the sense that to keep it under control. Since then, we have recognized as a party that the plan of the APNUFC and the President Granger is that they want a provocation to bring out their thugs. They want a provocation to bring out the army and the police that they control. And so we've been very, very cautious, and our people and our supporters and Guyanese in general have been very patient, very disciplined, waiting for the recount to finish, waiting now for the Elections Commission. However, were they to annul the results, or were the GCOM to give APNU the victory, that will probably not hold. And so we have deliberately worked with our people. And as I said, our people have been very disciplined because we believe that Granger wanted a provocation. He's been provoking situations to try to have a response by our people so he can bring his thugs in and the army and then declare a state of emergency. And we can't risk that. So we've been very careful at this point. First aspect, this is the first time that the PPP and the people of Guyana, the pro-democracy forces of Guyana, have really had the level of international and regional support ever. Maggie, Mrs. Bowden knows in the old days how the PPP struggled alone for so many years and decades. This time it's different, and that is that the forces in Guyana, first of all, is not the PPPC alone. We are joined by the smaller opposition parties, the private sector, the labor unions, the Hindu and Muslim organizations. Regrettably, the Christian organizations have been polarized and mainly support the governing party. Internationally, the observer missions have been extraordinary in terms of their reports. The Commonwealth, the Carter Center, the Organization of American States, CARICOM. And CARICOM is playing a critical role at this point after the March 14th attempt to swear in Granger, that CARICOM stepped in and tried to create a way forward with Mr. Granger and Mr. Jagdeo, who lead the opposition, to have a recount. And that took a whole 6 weeks to come into fruition based on a number of events by the APNUFC. However, your own Minister Raab, am I saying his name correct? Dominique Raab, has on 2 occasions made statements calling on the Guyana government to swear in based on credible results and not to swear in based on the fraudulent results that came out. I'm not paraphrasing him correctly, but he has been reported for the statements he made. So your own minister in the UK has come out. The US State Secretary Pompey and Assistant State Secretary Kozak, as well as US congressmen and senators, have all come out saying that they would not recognize the Guyana government if it was not based on credible results. We've also had responses from other countries that have also come forward. The Commonwealth, Baroness Scotland, has also been in tune with the Observer Report. We went to the Commonwealth Ministerial Advisory Committee group, and they had issued a warning to the Guyana government of what could happen if they did not concede and honor the results of the election. The other thing is that this is modern technology now, not the 1970s and 80s. So the issue of rapid communication has certainly helped us internally. We can reach many areas of the country based on connectivity, based on cell phones, which 30 years ago there were none. And so that has helped us to hold people together and inform them, and internationally it has certainly helped us. So the information-based technology has certainly telegraphed rapidly, moment to moment, to many of the international regional bodies. CARICOM has also said that if the elections aren't credible, there is the danger of Guyana being suspended from the CARICOM. So that's the first question. The second one to do with the Constitutional Court, there is one. It has been referred to both by the government and the PPPC in the period of the elections. The court has shown a level of strength or independence to make its decisions. In the case now is that really the elections commission cannot nullify the elections. They cannot call for fresh elections. However, they're only required to declare any problems has to go to election petition following, as I think in most parliamentary democracies. At this point, I'm not sure if there can be an approach to the Constitutional Court prior to the election's results, except other than to try and bring an injunction. There are many options that still have to unravel in terms of which way the Elections Commission goes. Nullify, declare the official results of the recount, which were observed by everybody, go with Lowenfield's figures, which are banal, or pull out the March 14th figures, which are in abeyance. So there are four possibilities what could happen. My view is that the international community and the regional community, because remember, regional is the Organization of American States, the Caribbean Community, International Commonwealth, UN, etc., that I think that over the next 3 days, they're going to be monitoring and observing. We have to put in another factor into all of this. Guyana has discovered enormous quantities of oil and gas offshore. And this will obviously have some impact on how some countries look at us in terms of investment possibility. And I don't want to get into oil and gas story because that is another area where the government, Mr. Granger, has sold out our patrimony for pittance. But I don't want to get into that. I think they're going to hold international community and regional community are going to watch over the next 3 days. If it is that they declare anything other than what is the results of the recount, which is that the PVPC won the elections, I think that Guyana stands the threat and the risk even more than before of being suspended as a member of the Commonwealth, of the CARICOM, of the Organization of American States. Now, a suspension would be one in which it would have tremendous impact on us as a people and our economy. We're right now almost bankrupt, by the way. So that I think that is a real possibility. It may not happen right away because these international bodies have their own procedures, etc. But I think Guyana is facing that risk, and they have warned over it. We've warned about this over and over again in the last 100-odd days. The Americans and British, Canadian, that's going to be a little more dicey in terms of how they react. However, jointly, their foreign missions in Guyana have been calling for the results to reflect the recount. And so they have been taking that position. They've not been making threats of suspension, although State Secretary Pompey said that were Guyana to swear in a government that is illegitimate without using credible results of the recount, that they would have to take serious action. So there has been that threat by the Americans.